What happens when East meets West in floral design? Our guest today will give us some answers. I'm Billie Jean Sorensen of the Pleasantville Garden Club, and our guest today is Jan Gordon, a longtime local resident. So welcome, Jan. Nice to have you here. And tell us about your journey into floral design.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I started becoming interested in flowers when I lived in Japan in 1973. I was teaching on a military base, and I was teaching children on the base, and one of the Japanese teachers asked a few of us if we'd be interested in learning about ikebana, which is the art of Japanese flower arranging. So I said sure, and I had never really been interested in flowers before or noticed them too much. But suddenly I became extremely drawn into the world of flowers.
Through these classes?
Through the classes. And the time in the classes brought me more awareness outside of the classes, and I began looking at the world around me very differently. And when I began touching the flowers very early on, I felt a sense of energized well-being, and I felt I was enjoying nature and I was alive at the present moment.
So there's a spiritual element of ikebana.
There is a spiritual element, and the element that we look for in ikebana is, the basis of it is Buddhist, and it's from the 15th century. And when you do ikebana, you think of the different levels in nature, and there's man, and then there's nature, and then there's the spirit. So there would be 3 different heights in an arrangement that you would be looking at, and the interaction of those, and they could also represent the past, the present, and the future, and your interaction with those.
It certainly sounds like you just don't throw a bunch of flowers in a vase and call it an arrangement. I understand there are many ikebana schools in Japan.
Yes. When I was first asked to study ikebana, I didn't know that there were many schools, and I began studying with my teacher, Keiko Murata, with her school, which is a combination of a school called Sugetsu Ikenobo. There's over 300 schools that are studied all over the world and in Japan. In the United States, there's predominantly 2 schools that are most popular, Sogetsu and Ikenobo. There's also Ohara, a 3rd school. And there's other people I've noticed doing demonstrations from other schools that do blend in and are invited to different organizations to do those demonstrations.
A few of us here in Westchester are what they call master gardeners, and we studied for about a half a year over at Cornell Extension. Tell us about the masters in ikebana. It's quite different, I understand.
Yes, it's quite a long process, and it can take a lifetime to become a master. I studied for 3 years continually, and I guess am considered a beginner or maybe an intermediate person, but to become a master, you really need to do certain things in order to study, and you give lessons to other people at a certain point. There's a real culture around it, and it almost is handed down from family to family. There's lineage almost involved in it, and oftentimes the person who does the arrangements, their mother or their father or a relative or in their town is the master, and they are taken under the wing of that person, and they devote themselves to that art form.
I understand that most of the masters in Japan are men. Is that correct?
There are a tremendous amount of men that are headmasters, but there's a lot of very established and well-known women too. But in Japan, I think the male is more dominant in many professions, although that is changing over the years. But when I go to demonstrations, very big, important demonstrations, it's often done by a man, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about the principles of ikebana? We will probably repeat this when we start to do some designs, when you start to do some designs this morning. But if you can give us just kind of a summary of how you go about it.
Well, I'm not a master, so I don't usually demonstrate doing a traditional ikebana arrangement, although I can do them. But you would start with oftentimes a lower container with a pin cushion called a kenzan to hold your flowers in. It is not as floral as, for example, this arrangement has so many flowers in it.
This is more of an Asian fusion,
yes,
which is what you do.
Yes, I would call this a mixture. So a traditional Japanese arrangement would have the 3 basic lines representing the nature, spirit, and man. And then the height of those branches is very important, and you measure them a specific way, and you roughly take the first branch to be 1.5 the height of the of your container, plus the width of the neck, oftentimes, and the angles that you place the arrangements in. There's a lot of definition of line, so there is negative space and line and definition. And then there are simple flowers, and later on you will see some very simple, beautiful arrangements. But your eye travels, it kind of makes a line. You take a journey on the lines, and you wouldn't see a mass. You'd see much more openness and definition.
Your eye leads you through the arrangement, the way it's done.
Definitely, definitely.
Like a painting, a good painting.
Exactly. So there would be many different layers you would see, and also with a Japanese arrangement or the Asian fusion style arrangement, I find that I'm always going back to those flowers, no matter where I am in my house. I find I always make an excuse to pass those flowers. And a Japanese arrangement or an Asian fusion arrangement or an American arrangement too can define a space psychologically and physically. I have a friend that I visited a couple of weeks ago, Carol, and as a welcoming gift I did a flower arrangement for her, and she said to me, well, my kitchen and my den, that space there, I don't really like that. And so we decided to put an arrangement in that spot, and suddenly it had such pop and definition. And both of us found that we were continually returning to that particular place where the arrangement was, and it really brought energy and nature and a sense of being alive in that particular space.
I can appreciate that. I found that in my own home now. So you returned then to Pleasantville, and you have been working in the community. Tell us a little bit about that, the last years.
Well, my professional life is that I've been teaching for 36 years, and I recently retired. My last place that I worked was Roaring Brook School in Chappaqua, and they have just such a wonderful staff there, and I was honored to be in charge of purchasing flowers, and in the early years making arrangements for different occasions, and when people perhaps had a baby or got married, or if someone was ill, I had the pleasure of purchasing flowers for them and helping with the design of those flowers. And I did that, I think, for about 7 years.
So now you're concentrating on your own organization, which is called East Meets West.
Yes.
And you're doing designing flowers to echo the beauty of nature, really. And
yes, and this would be an example of something that I might do where I have the principles of the high, medium, and the low, always working in layers and looking for a line. And the textures here are very, very different.
Yes.
There's something very delicate here in this little orchid, this miniature yellow orchid, almost like a slipper in here. And then we have a different texture of the calla lily. And because of that shape, it's almost a funnel, and you start to look into it. And then you have this purple, like the broom, the top of a broom, and the purple contrasted with the yellow is very, very traditional in French art and French flower design, and so I put it in a French vase that has swirl that moves you around. And then if you look at another layer, you see this bear grass, and this is just curled. And what I did was, I'll just take a piece out.
Mm-hmm.
I put it around my 2 or 3 fingers like yarn, and then you just curl it around like that, and then you put it on the inside of your finger, your hands, and you squeeze it. And the warmth from the inside of your hand is going to make a shape.
Amazing.
And you can make a lot of different shapes depending on, when I look at this, do I want something thin and soft, or do I want something thick? What's going to frame and best balance this? So then when I open it up, and I can smooth it out, but I've just made
beautiful,
a nice round curl. But then if you want to get fancy, you can actually crunch it like that, or you can change it any way you want. And then there's another flower, which is a Japanese flower. It's an aster, but it's a Japanese variety, white with a yellow. And then there's a nice soft branch here, like a ball. So the textures are quite varied, and also the different levels. Your eye goes down. So you look at and you see a whole, but you start to see the different parts.
It's very beautiful. It's very
Thank
beautiful. You've done arrangements for a number of organizations here in Westchester, haven't you? I noticed Neighbors Link at some point.
Yes, I've done a lot of arrangements for different charities and fundraisers and things like that. I'm going to do one at the end of this month for an organization in Mount Kisco called Jewel, which has younger people and joining elders and younger people together.
Lovely.
In Mount Kisco, and different organizations in the past for the Lions Club, for the senior citizens, things like that.
Are you also going to classes at Botanical Gardens, did you tell me, or have?
Yes, I have taken a class at the Botanical Garden, Essential Floral Design, for beginning florists, and I'm going to take another one to become more familiar with an American style of arranging basic floral design, and they have a tremendous staff there and lots of good equipment and other people to network with and talk with.
I would assume that you could almost teach a class to the beginning group yourself, but
I don't think so. I don't think so, because the more you know, the more there is to learn.
That's true of gardening.
Exactly what happens.
It's certainly true of gardening of any kind.
Yeah.
Well, I know you brought with you some magazines of the Ikebana magazine, which is available to anybody who wants to subscribe to it. I'm sure some people will be interested in learning more. And I went through a couple of these magazines, and the arrangements in them are just fantastic. So I thought maybe we would take a look at some of those arrangements, the photographs of those arrangements, and you could talk about them and talk about the principles in designing those arrangements. So why don't we move now to have a look at one of those, and if you would just talk about it, and I'll ask you any questions I might think of.
Absolutely.
Unless there is something else you wanted to mention in your background right now.
Oh, I'm good, but I just wanted to add a little bit more, since you mentioned the Ikebana International, which is the magazine that I've been getting since 1977, that anybody can subscribe to that, and you can go and Google Ikebana International, and you'll get a tremendous amount of information.
I'll bet.
And if people are interested in learning more about this or seeing it, well, first of all, they're welcome to call me.
Or email you. We'll have your email address on the...
Yes, they absolutely can.
Wonderful.
Also, through the Garden Club, there was a wonderful demonstration done by Shoko Iwata, a beautiful sogetsu.
We did have that program on television here 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Demonstration. And she lives in Larchmont, and I have her number, and you can also Google her. And there's a number of women in Larchmont that teach the flower arrangement. Also, you can go to the museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I believe this month Shoko Iwata is going to do an exhibit, an arrangement there. The New York Botanical Garden is wonderful. In March at the Nippon Club, Judith Hata, who's a fabulous teacher, and she does things on a huge scale. It's almost landscape architecture. The depth of type of arrangements that she does. How she transports her materials is quite amazing. She must have a truck to do that, and she's going to be at the Nippon Club in March, and there's the Philadelphia Flower Show the first week in March, and there'll be a little section there on Ikebana.
Wonderful. Was wonderful resources. All right, let's have a look at the first photograph, and then let you talk about it.
Sure. The first photograph comes from the Ikebana International, was shown in the Ikebana International magazine, but it's a very old book that I had when I first went to Japan. It's called Flower Arrangement the Ikebana Way, and it shows a very traditional kind of arrangement. And when we move on to the next photo, you'll see that the lines are, your eye is caught up, going up to the very, very top of that, which is probably curly willow tip. And also that branch is molded in the same way that I molded the bear grass. You form and you shape and you can curl the different materials to complement your base, and you can see how high the top level is, and that's precisely measured from the bottom and the width of that particular container, and it really, the branch is dominant and the flower is extremely soft and sort of quiet. It doesn't grab your eye, and in a very gentle, soft way, you make a triangle with your mind's eye. If you were put a dot at the top, then at the flower, and to the branch that pulls your eye outward, you'd have a triangle with man, nature, and spirit.
But there is also a high, top, medium, and low in that arrangement too, isn't there, as well?
Yes.
You can see the top of the peak of it, and then there's the flowers in the middle, and
you can make your triangle connection many different ways and multiple ways with one arrangement. So you can start out with just the branches being high, medium, and low, and then you can connect dots to other parts of the arrangement, depending on your mood and the movement and the textures of the flowers that you're using.
So this could be an arrangement that took several hours to put together. It's not something you do quickly.
That's such an important point, because when you do a flower arrangement, it's as opposed to in a floral shop where you have the constraint of time and cost also of the materials. The Japanese flower arrangement is not done quickly, and you're measuring. And during my formal training, oftentimes the teacher would say, Keiko Murata, why don't you remeasure that, because your height maybe needs to be more pronounced, or there's not enough definition in the arrangement, so that you get a sense by touching those flowers, and also you angle them, and oftentimes a protractor can be taken out to check your angles as a way to help you get more space in doing that. So this would be an example of something very traditional.
But you learn to do it mostly with your eyes, right?
Your eyes
and some measurement.
And your hands, because as you touch the flowers and you're curling the willow tip or the bear grass, or you're making a triangle out of the leaf of an iris, the green part of the iris, you're sensing, you're drawn to do something with the touch. So it's not just visual, though it is extremely visual. It's also very textural to the person arranging it. And then there's the communication with the person seeing it of something you want to evoke for them. Yesterday I brought an arrangement to someone, a very special lady, and she said to me, "It's very hopeful."
That's wonderful.
And that was in the place of work.
That's
and
wonderful.
What a wonderful emotion to have, that of, very hopeful.
And especially for today, for somebody to say something is hopeful, as we progress into the political situation.
So that there's another traditional arrangement. The zebra grass is a very popular material to use, and the stripes of that kind of material, it's a wider green, and the next piece, you can see the stripes that are in there. It's very fanciful the way the zebra part is actually folded, and on the left and the right I see two arms with someone's hands on their hips, kind of, if you can imagine that. Use your imagination. And now those are two triangles. And so you have your triangles. You do want to do things in groups of threes and things that are asymmetrical, because that has a lot of asymmetry to it. You try to avoid doing things that are in four, because in Japanese the number 4 is associated with death. And for some reason, to keep things asymmetrical, 3s, 5s, 7s, those type of numbers have more of lend themselves to asymmetry. Also, the base, the neck of that vase is an unusual shape, and it adds a curve, even though the lines of that, the zebra, are straight. They also curve out, and then your eye is drawn up to the flower.
It's simple but elegant.
Extremely, and it takes a long time to do that type of arrangement, and I will show you during the next segment one of the little pin cushions, the kenzan, that type of arrangement is put in, and you have to be careful not to prick your fingers with it, because and there's a way to put the branch in and then gently mold it in the direction that you want it to keep in place.
Terrific. Shall we move to the next then?
Absolutely. So then, moving on, there's a book called Zen Flowers, and in that particular book, we start to get more into perhaps more relaxing things that would be more meditative. And this arrangement with the white lilies is a mass of white lilies with curly willow tip. And then in the base of it, there's also some definition and curly willow tip to bring your eye down. And that's layered. There's different levels of it. And that curly willow tip doesn't come that way. That has to be measured and molded with the heat of your hand, and then placed so it brings your eye up and out. And then the white lily itself makes its own triangle all by itself, but you can see the lushness of it. White also denotes the color of the emperor. So a white chrysanthemum shows a tremendous strength, yet a quiet calmness also. And so this arrangement would be, it's one that I really love, and I've made similar arrangements to this, and I've been inspired because of this picture from this particular book, Zen Flowers.
Could we go back to the one just before this?
Sure.
I think that is extremely interesting. How do you get those flowers into that mold of, it was sort of a circular almost.
You mean on the cover?
No, the arrangement we saw just before this one.
The one on the cover of the book, the Zen Flowers, was it shaped like that, or are you talking about the zebra one?
No, I was talking about the
bowl, the one in the bowl.
The one we saw, just that one,
okay.
Yes. How do you do that?
Well, you start by placing your tulip upright, straight, in your bowl, and in the bottom is a circular little pin cushion, a kenzan. And once it's upright, you gently lean the flower very slowly, and you cut your flower at an angle, so it's, and you can also stick a small piece of wood or from a branch, woody branch, in the bottom if you need to hold it more securely. And you ever so slowly bend it out. And this is done to mirror the shape of the round bowl. So it's very clever the way it's done. Now once you get the bottom part angled the way you want, you very slowly pull apart the greens, and then you slowly will turn your tulip. And when you buy tulips, they're not all straight. So you pick the ones that are going to lend themselves to the direction that you want. You think you can force flowers into a certain shape, but you often can't, and they just go the way they want to. so you pick the ones that will lend themselves to the shape of your desire.
Thank you. That was fascinating, and the arrangement fascinates me. So thank you for moving back to it. Now we can move on.
Yes, of course. Now there's another book that I have enjoyed so much, and my dear friend Carol gave me this book, whose house where I went to and made that defining arrangement for her. Oh, this one is called Simply Flowers, and this one has some examples of repeating arrangements in them, where there's just one color, and it might repeat itself in a similar container. And this, now here's the one that my friend gave me. This is Keiko's Ikebana, and I've brought in for the next segment those dendrobian orchids, and it's a fascinating, beautiful design. It's very clever the way the bottom part of it, the designer has taken some of just the faces of the flower part and laid them out there as if they just fell, as if naturally they did, although they were put there quite purposefully. And there's a triangle design that pulls your eye down, and there you have the bear grass, which is not curled as my bear grass was curled, and that supports the shape of those beautiful orchids.
It's a sensational arrangement.
Yeah, and now there's another arrangement in there, and this is my favorite, one of my favorite ones, because I love movement, and the circular part of those greens are curled, and then they're probably fastened in some way that you could fasten with Scotch tape or staples, or there could be something like chicken wire in the vase, and they could be fastened that way. But there are circles that are overlapping each other. And the color palette chosen there, they're very soft flowers. There's purple, there's pink, to remain in contrast to the silvery, sometimes transparent vase. There's also a liner put into that vase to elevate the flowers higher. And I notice in modern flower arrangements, the type of arrangements that I like to do, which I call East meets West, or an Asian style fusion, there's more content in the vase, a few more flowers, but still there is definition with the greens, and you're very much drawn to that, the motion of that. I mean, if you keep looking at it, and if you take the highest part of that, the lowest part, and then the part on the left, and you were to, in your eye, just make a dot and connect those, you have triangles everywhere with those flowers. And you can actually pretend not to see the purple and just the pink, and then your eyes can just be looking at the purple and not the pink, and it just plays a lot of tricks with your eyes because of the texture and the movement.
It's beautiful, very beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on? Shall we get the flowers and let you do some arranging for us?
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Jan, now we come to the exciting part of the program. You're going to talk about another arrangement that you've already made, and then you're going to do an arrangement right here for us on camera. So tell us about the one you've already done.
This is an arrangement that uses a lot of the Japanese technique. I'm going to stand in back of it so I can talk about it better. And let's start with the container. The container is a mid-century American art pottery container, and I find it just beautiful. The color is gorgeous. I just want to hold it, and it's very geometrical, but yet it's circular, and it goes in and then comes out. The neck of it goes in and out, and it's a dream to arrange in. This style of pottery, and there's a lot smaller ones, and you can find them at tag sales, and house sales, flea markets, really lends itself to something quite dramatic. And my sister lent this to me because I knew it would lend itself to using quince. Now this quince is very, very large and long, and I cut this down. Probably I took almost a foot off of this particular branch. It's a strong branch, so it has strength and character, but yet it has little buds, very delicate pink buds on it. And these haven't opened yet, and these have. So you really have a transition of seasons when you think of it. You have the strength and the color of the branch, and then you have the closed buds and the opening of the buds too. And it commands a line, and I've angled it so that we have big spaces in between here and in this area, and your eye is drawn from the right to the left. And once you get that in place and you cut that at an angle and you rest it on the inside of the vase in here, it does have a mind of its own, however, so you have to be respectful of the way the branch leads you. Now, the second thing will be the white flowers. And the white flower is the flower of the emperor, and that's why I chose it, the white chrysanthemum. And I have a high, and I have a medium, and I have a low flower. And it could be higher, and this could be the same, and that could even be lower. And I've angled it and I've cut it so that it rests at the edge. And when you put these in, you're crisscrossing them, making like a teepee in here to keep them in place. And I wanted to get a pop from this white and the softness, although even without the red cluster, the spray of roses, it looks beautiful. You can have only the quince and it's gorgeous. You can add just the 3 simple flowers, it's beautiful. But when I saw this orange, I felt it really added a lot of pop to the eye. So I wanted the orange, although it's the contrast, to take a secondary place, but yet add a richness to a very quiet arrangement, but it added some clear definition. And if you were to put this in your house, you'd want to put it in a place where there really was nothing else around it. So you would need a pretty big area to put it, and you wouldn't want it near books or at some place that you look at it from one direction, from the front. Although it does look pretty from where I'm standing too, it adds more of a story when you're facing the front, because if you have maybe the past, the present, and the future type of a feeling that way.
It's absolutely sensational from every angle. Really beautiful. Did you cut your, so yesterday you cut the big branches. You can cut those ahead of time?
Yes.
And then you would cut the flowers just before you put them in, probably?
Yes. Now, when you cut the roses, you're supposed to cut them in the water. When you cut the branches, you cut them at an angle, and some people will take a mallet, a kitchen mallet, and gently tap the bottom of the branch, and that encourages the flow of the water through to the branch, and it'll prolong the life of it. Roses can easily get an air block, so they can be more delicate to work with. These are very strong, healthy stems. Some of the roses are beautiful, but they might be skinnier. And when you angle, you also want to make sure, when you get flowers home from a florist, to make sure that they're all covered. When you put the flowers into the water, you would remove any of the green, because you don't want any green resting inside the water, because that will then make the flowers not last as long.
Well, thank you so much. Do you want to come over now and do an arrangement for us here?
Okay. So now this particular arrangement is done just in a green vase. It's not expensive. It's very modern. And to help me hold some of the pieces in it, I took some wire, which is just stainless steel wire, which my husband bought for me at the hardware store. It's 19 gauge. And I just made a ball with it. It's very flexible. You could also use chicken wire.
That is very clever.
And then you just gently press, and that goes in there. And you can keep it up a little bit, and then when you're done, you can also press down. And then I have some water in here, but when I'm done, I'm going to then fill it up as I need it. And I have some water here if I need to recut flowers. I just wanted to share this particular piece is a kenzan, or a pin cushion, and it's very easy to work with, because the traditional containers like this, pin cushions, Kenzans, are bigger and you can prick your fingers easily, and it's very protected. It's very easy to get, and you can find this online. It's quite easy. In Mount Vernon, New York, Two's Company is where this one is from. But you put it in a low container and then you fill it with water, and then you would take something woody and then you would cut it at an angle.
And you need very sharp scissors.
Yes, and then
Yes.
you'd put it in straight like that, and then you gently start to bend it. Because you asked me about the cover of the Zen flowers, and you wanted to know how the tulips could possibly bend like that, and that's the technique that you would use. And it does stay. Or you can put another little piece of wood in there, or a pebble, anything like that to prop it up. You can use a lot of different props to help you.
Very nice.
Okay, now my materials for this arrangement were inspired by the book Keiko's Flowers, and I have here horsetail, and they only had the thinner horsetail, but I usually get the thicker kind, and this one is dried, but you can see the difference there between the two. And the top part of it is a little bit rough, and sometimes I really like that, but other times I can cut it at an angle if I want it crisper or pointier. So I'm first going to start with my horsetail, and I want to angle it, and I'm always going to be repositioning things, and I'm getting it inside the wire to keep it in place, and I can be turning it and repositioning it, but I'm going to make my X's and the teepee kind of inside. And I'm doing it, you're seeing it from the back, I'm doing it from the front, but when I'm done, I'm going to turn it around, and you'll get the full effect of it. And so I'm starting with groups of 3, and I'm going to get, let's see. Now I've already cut these just for time's sake. They were longer than this. And here's a nice straight one, so I'll put that one there. And it's a constant give and take and figuring out when you get something in, and I notice this is wobbly, so I'm not going to use that one. And even if you put this on a table, I think it looks stunning to just have the horsetail. The horsetail is reminiscent of bamboo. Mm-hmm. And the bamboo is often done in a garden, which is very restful and lends itself to reflection, contemplation, meditation. So that's one of the reasons that I really like this particular flower, this branch screen. So I'm just fooling around with it.
Patience is a virtue in this
Absolutely.
game, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I can turn it as I'm working. So I want one there. I'll put one here.
Now I noticed some you're not necessarily putting all the way down to the bottom of the base. Mm-hmm.
And that's where that ball catches it.
Oh, okay.
And I can also rest it, because you try to have 3 points to stabilize it. Mm-hmm. So if I have it in the ball, and then I have it resting against the vase itself, then I create some stable. Although, I mean, it can move around quite a bit. Okay, so here we have, now I would find this very attractive.
Yes, I agree.
Myself. Now I have some lilac, and I want to add a motion and a roundness to this arrangement. So I'm just going to cut it just a little bit, like that, make a snip. Some people also cut in addition to give a little more airflow in there. And I want this to be lower. So I'm just going to place the lilacs there. I want them to start going outward. Mm-hmm. And they do droop and cascade a bit. As I'm working, I'm thinking of the direction that the flowers are going in, and it's a lot of trial and error also. And when you're done, you know, sometimes you have to redo things. And I'm comparing these two, and I'm looking at them, and I see this one, I like the shape, the bell shape of it a little better. And I have some Genestra, and this is a completely different texture. It's more feathery. Well, as this is plump and rounder, this is a lot more feathery. So I'm going to put that in there. And again, I want this lower than the green. And this is how it's kind of fusion from the Asian technique, the Japanese ikebana, which this is not, but I'm using the Asian flowers and I'm doing 3 different levels. And I'm having a lot of motion to it as well.
What is the difference between this and a real ikebana? Is it because it's fuller and...
well, there's too much in here.
Yes,
That's to start with.
They keep it very simple and
this would be called, there is a style of ikebana called freestyle. So I would say this could be more freestyle. Also, it's possible that the traditional ikebana might not be done in this type of container. You might have a container that's lower, and you'd be keeping things in place with the kenzan, with the pincushion. And then if you'd have an oval container, you'd move your flower over to the side so you'd have more asymmetry. So this will not be as asymmetric. This particular arrangement over here has a tremendous amount of asymmetry here, and it's pulling you one way and then the other, but in a gentle way. It feels good to be looking at it. I'm just going to cut this one. When you cut, it's better if you do little snips, and it promotes greater airflow.
You mean as opposed to cutting one big piece at once?
Yes.
Make several snips along the...
Yes, for the flower, I've been told that that promotes water.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go like that, just little tiny snips. So what I'm creating here would be a lot of feathery kind of motion going around here and some different texture. And I'll see if I want to put this in. I don't think so. And now for the final touch, I'm going to take this beautiful dendrobium orchid, and I've kept it in water. So I'm just going to take that out. And it's naturally leaning, and I also curved it a little bit last night. So I'm going to put that here, and I want to make a triangle. And there's one. Here's another one. Now this one is straighter.
So you really are using Japanese principles, but you're adding an American touch to it, or a Western touch to it.
There's a big amount of work that's done in floral design in general, and this is just one style that I've developed. And you see this one is curving also. So now I have your eyes up high. Now it's medium with some swirling around, and now I'm going to make a triangle, and I'll turn that around in a moment. And I want to make it very dramatic. So I'm going to put it, I have it on a low pedestal, but I think I'm going to raise the pedestal, put it on a higher pedestal.
Did you want to use this?
I think I will when I'm done here. I'm going to stick it right in there. And then there's one more. And I just take out that extra little plastic that's holding the water. And then I want to maybe extend these just a little bit. I'm looking at it, my eyes telling me this is short, this is tall. We want to go high, low. We want to think triangles. My eyes telling me to take this one out, stick it more here. I can't get that in there. And then let's reposition this.
When one finishes, should you always walk around the arrangement, even if it's going to be seen from one side, just to evaluate how you...
Well, the evaluation, your own personal evaluation, would be done from the front of it. It wouldn't be from the side. But, you know, occasionally I have to fudge it a little bit if I have it on a dining room table. So I'm going to put this here. I'm just going to turn it around very slowly.
Well, may I applaud you? It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
It's sensational and exciting and beautiful.
Thank you. Well, it's been my pleasure. Maybe we'll do this again.
Well,
See.
thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure, and I'm sure all flower arrangers or flower lovers are going to enjoy your presentation. Thank you so much for being with us, Jan.
Thank you.